Well, hello there. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of Telile 24/7. I'm your host, Adam Cook, and this week we're continuing our Community Media Matter series. This time around, we'll speak with Richmond MLA Trevor Boudreau. Telile 24/7 first started getting Boudreau's opinions on local matters when he was still a town councillor for Port Hawkesbury. Now that he's celebrating his one-year anniversary as a member of the provincial legislature, we thought we might ask Trevor Boudreau how he feels Telile and other community media has impacted getting the word out about municipal politics and also provincial politics. But we begin with a conversation with Richmond Warden Amanda Mombourquette. Of course, Telile's commitment to municipal affairs goes well before Telile 24/7 began, with the broadcasting and live streaming of municipal council meetings, both the regular council meetings and special meetings such as Committee of the Whole. However, since Telile 24/7 began, that coverage has increased exponentially, and Amanda Mombourquette has found herself at the center of it more than once. So we have an interview conducted by a special guest to the Telile studios, the program coordinator for the Local Journalism Initiative, as conducted by the Canadian Association of Community Television Users and Stations, Victoria Fenner. Here is Victoria's conversation with Warden Mombourquette.
Hello, I'm Victoria Fenner, and I'm a guest host here on Telile Community Television. And Adam, thank you for inviting me in to interview Amanda Mombourquette. Amanda is the warden for Richmond County, and we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of things, mostly around media and what it's like to be an elected official in a community like this, and what kinds of information sources there are to get the message out. So a little bit of talk about media democracy. But first of all, I'd like to say thank you for being here and talking to me, Amanda.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure, as always.
And before we get into the discussion about media, then, I'm from a big city. I'm from a rural area originally, but
Right.
I don't really know how all these levels of government work.
Right.
And so could you just explain to me and to our viewers, what does a warden do?
Sure. So essentially, a warden is, it's a little bit like being a mayor, except instead of being elected by all of the people, you are elected by the councillors who are elected by the people. So Richmond County is a rural municipality, and we have 5 districts within that municipality. Each district at the municipal level elects every 4 years a municipal councillor. So we had those elections in October. The 5 councillors that were elected then from there chose me to be their warden. And I will say, in my role as warden, my job is to chair the meetings. I'm sort of a lead spokesperson with media and other partners, and definitely sort of that conduit between the CAO and the council. But at the end of the day, the warden is really just one of many councillors that sit around the table. It's not really a hierarchy. It's more of an alignment, I guess, just to make sure that there's one person who would be required to do all those things, like chair, like speak with the media. We all have an equal voice at the table, though.
So tell us about Richmond County. How big is it? Who lives here? What do they do for a living? Just anything that you think that someone who lives here who might not know, and also people from away, because there may be an away audience for this as well.
Right. So Richmond County is it's a really great place, and I highly recommend for people to come and visit. We are nestled on the southern coast of Cape Breton Island, which of course is one of the top travel and destinations in the world, as has been designated by magazines as such. So we're really proud of our tourism status in the global, tourism sphere, but it's also a great place to live and to work. So being where we are, we're about 30 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes from the Canso Causeway, depending on where you live in Richmond County. And so it's right along Highway 4. We have a natural sort of conduit towards Sydney, which the CBRM, of course, being the second largest municipality in Nova Scotia. So lots and lots of traffic traffic coming through Richmond County, which makes it a great place to do business, gives us kind of more of a 12-month of the year economy compared to other places on Cape Breton Island, which are more seasonal in nature. We're very proud of our Acadian designation. We are home to several French communities, including L'Ardoise and Isle Madame. So it's really a very multicultural place. We have about maybe 9,000 people living in the county at this point as of the last census. I'm really happy to say that our declining population in the last census seemed to have leveled off a bit. We lost a few folks, but not in any great numbers as we had in the past. And I really see that as a sign that we are starting to turn things around. We're seeing lots of growth in sectors. Of course, our fisheries. Richmond County is home to a fantastic industrial park. We're seeing lots of interest in new clean fuels, hydrogen technology. So it's a really interesting time to be living in Richmond County and in rural Nova Scotia, because there seems to be lots of opportunity on the horizon as we kind of come out of these pandemic years, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to be what is to come.
So 9,000 people is spread out over a large area. Is really not a lot. Right?
Yeah. I'd have to look up the number of square kilometers, but certainly we have some regions of Richmond County that are more populated than others. We've tend to have more of a business density in areas like St. Peter's, sort of concentrated populations in several communities like Descousse, Ayrshad, Petit de Gras, etc. But then we have swaths of the county, such as out towards Framboise, Johnstown, Evanston, that are very much less densely populated. And that presents certain challenges, certainly when you're trying to get the word out about what's going on in the county. So, yeah.
And so what do people do for a living? You've mentioned certain industrial sectors, but what are those jobs within those sectors that people do to go to work every day?
Yeah, so we have a lot of fishers in Richmond County. We have a lot of professional workers in places like, Port Hawkesbury Paper and the former New Star facility, now Everwind, again in our industrial park. We've got a lot of independent businesses as well, which is really great to see. So our hospitality sector has really kind of is diversifying all the time, and it's really wonderful to see that. I think independent retail, independent hospitality, it's a really important cog in our economy, and I think it's part of what helps money stay local, so that it's not kind of going out the window to larger organizations that are more multinational in nature.
And you said that your population is starting to grow again. Where are those people coming from?
Well, it's really all over the place. We've had for several years now, we've had a really wonderful German community growing here. We've had more recently, or traditionally, people from the U.S. Definitely settling here at least part of the year. More recently, it seems to be diversifying and to include people from the Philippines and people from of course we had families from Syria. My understanding now from the Ukraine. So it's really becoming a place where people can find a spot for themselves, and it's great to see that kind of more diversity coming into the county for sure.
That is encouraging, because we tend to think of small towns, not just here in the Maritimes, but anywhere, in Canada, as being places where there are families who have been there for generations and generations, and that the towns and the municipalities stay about the same in terms of their makeup, but you're not finding that that's the case now.
Well, I do think things are starting to change, and you can see the change in just the activities of the welcome groups that have popped up in Richmond County.
What are welcome groups?
So we have 3 welcome groups, I believe, at this stage. One in St. Peter's, one in Louisdale, and one here in Isle Madame. And I will tell you, they have been busy. Basically, they're part of a larger network called the the Cape Breton Island Welcome Network, and it's an immigration sort of settlement type program where you're reaching out to people who are new to your community. You are extending a welcome, visiting them, introducing them to the services and the people of the community, and trying to make sure that they feel connected, and that increases the chances that they will stay longer. So it's a really great initiative, and those welcome groups have been so busy. Everything from delivering baskets, to welcome people, to hosting really fantastic events, and it's wonderful to see it. And the demand for that service is very strong. So I think that's really one of the ways that that all of these new people coming to the county is really starting to show, because people are wanting to get involved, and there seems to be, like I said, lots of demand from newcomers for that service.
That's a great story.
It is, yeah.
I'm going to talk to Adam about telling that one in
Yeah.
more depth. But now, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you is because I've been hearing more and more about how challenging it is in rural areas for basic messages to get out to the people who live there. What are the challenges that you face in terms of communicating with a very diverse population in an area which is geographically quite spread out?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and it's something that we grapple with on a regular basis at Municipal Council, because certainly since we were elected in October 2020, as I mentioned, we have had a priority as a council on engaging with the public. So asking members of the public to participate on committees. We've got studies on the go, so we've had a strategic plan refresh that is just going to be wrapping up very shortly. We've got municipal land use planning and initiative on the go that is again going to be wrapping very shortly. Trail studies, you name it. And so we have been always wanting to go out and consult with the public to find out what are their priorities, what do you want to see reflected in the plan and in the actions that the municipality will take in the next 3 to 5 years. And so how do you get that, how do you get that message out has been the challenge. And so we have tried everything from mail drops, which I think are very effective, but also very expensive by the time you design, print, and distribute those materials. We've had, of course, a social media presence, and that's been extremely effective. We've had, things like posters up in different community halls and different community venues, and like little takeaway cards where those posters are located. Again, really effective in some places, but in places like, Framboise, where there's not necessarily a business district, it can make it more challenging. And so we've been really trying to find the right balance and experimenting with that a little bit. I have to say that having Telile as a community television station has been a huge help. It's allowed us to live stream. Telile provides our live stream service for council, which gets streamed not only on the internet, but also into people's homes through the television channel. And that is where I think we're getting a great deal of benefit. Having both that digital presence and that in your home on the TV presence where people can pick the channel, very traditionally, I think that is bridging a huge gap for us. Because the bottom line is not everybody's on the internet. Not everybody can get the internet in Richmond County. There are large parts of our county right now that are completely underserved with broadband and cellular signals. So, so we find that the partnership with Telile, not just on the live streaming, but also programs like this. I did an interview with Adam when our budget came out. I've done lots of interviews over the years with him and with others here to help make sure that we're not only sort of depending on what's easy in terms of putting our message out to the public, but we're kind of trying to get as deep a dive as we can. So we do the best that we can, and I have to say community TV is a huge help.
Can you think of a couple of examples where you have been able to see, yes, that the TV station is a great help in getting the message out?
I sure can. Actually, I have a great story about that. So, a long time extended, I consider them extended family, but really, you know, friends and neighbors of mine. They've seen me kind of run for politics, and I'm sure they were scratching their heads a little bit. But I ran into them at a breakfast not long ago, and Charlie, the guy, you know, the man, he told that I'm friends with. He said to me, you know, he said, I wake up in the morning and you're on the TV, and I go to bed and you're on the TV. You're always on the TV. Do you pay them? And I laughed so much because he's not a person, I mean, you know, who's going to be on the internet. He's not a person, you know, who is going to be, you know, maybe live streaming, watching the live stream kind of thing. But he is absolutely paying attention now to what's going on, obviously because we have a strong personal connection, but also because he can. You know, the community TV has made it accessible for him. And I think that is something that, you know, is very precious. So thanks to Charlie and Polly for watching me on TV.
If a mayor or a warden or a reeve or whatever from another municipality approached you and said, we've heard about this community media stuff, it's like, and we're thinking about, you know, what would you tell them? What are the benefits and advantages of having a community TV station?
Yeah, well, I would say to anybody, if you're committed to openness and transparency, then do it, because you're missing people if you don't. You know, everything from, you know, even, you know, you think about newspaper distribution. We have a weekly here in our region that serves a larger region than just Richmond County. But again, not everybody will get that newspaper. That newspaper's online, but again, not everybody can get on the internet or is online. So it just fills an incredible gap. So if you're really committed to engaging with the public and making sure that your residents are informed, it's a no-brainer, you know. You just need to go for it.
And what else do you have in terms of media coverage? You mentioned the weekly newspaper, which a lot of communities don't even have that anymore.
Yeah.
So what else is there? What information sources can the public go to besides Telile and the community newspaper and social media and the posters and things that you were mentioning before? Yeah,
so aside from those pieces we've mentioned, we do publish a quarterly newsletter called Reflections of Richmond, and it's fantastic. It is chock full of information about, you know, your council, initiatives that are on the go, economic development, you know, garbage pickup, you know, and of course, tons and tons of fantastic recreation activities, because Richmond County does a really great job on its recreation file. It'll include, you know, everything from public works information to, you know, finance information, how to pay your tax bill, right, and how to interpret your tax bill or your water and sewer bills. So, so we really depend on that, and that does go to every household in Richmond County. But as you know, a quarterly newsletter like that is as useful as it is. It can't respond in real time. Right? And so that's where these other pieces come in. There's no silver bullet on making sure you reach everyone, but I will tell you, you know, if you choose a variety of ways, it's, you know, it makes a big difference. And we saw that with our accessibility planning. You know, we developed a fantastic accessibility plan, and it really, that plan in particular really forced us, you know, to challenge our own thoughts around how to get the message out, because we weren't just trying to reach, you know, people in general. We were trying to reach a targeted population that traditionally is underrepresented in this municipal consultations and municipal government. And so it was a fantastic exercise, and I think opened our eyes to, you know, more things that we need to be doing.
Right. We've been talking about the people who live here and how you communicate with them, but I'm wondering about how you're covered by the larger media in the province. Does your area get coverage from the big media located down in Halifax, or, you know, does it work for you when they do, or?
Well, you know, It's a great question. The reality is, when something goes wrong, well, then we do tend to get lots of, bigger media coverage. But when things go right, maybe less so. And, I think it's just the nature of the beast. I will say that, having CBC presence on Cape Breton Island is a big help because we are able to tap into that larger network, and they are still very, very much do stories of interest. And so, programs like Information Morning and, there's a municipal check-in in the afternoon. So those things really, really help as well. But for the most part, we don't land in the big, Chronicle Herald or those larger publications because, hopefully we're not doing anything wrong.
But on the other hand, it seems to me that you want to be seen by the greater outside world because you want to attract investment. You want people to come here to, on vacation. You want the economic development is tied in with it. So I'm just wondering how much of your media strategy, could be reaching other media so that people see what's happening in this community and it's not so insular.
Yeah. So I mean, we really. We really depend on partnerships for that kind of positive storytelling because it is hard to get those pieces out, right? It just is. And so when we look to, organizations like Destination Cape Breton, we look to organizations like Celtic Colors, that's where we really have an opportunity, I think, to tell, all the interesting cultural and really, experiential opportunities that Richmond County has to provide. On the economic development side, we've got a great partnership with the Cape Breton Partnership, and so they provide all of our economic development services for us, and it creates more of a regional approach, which I think is very useful for a place like Richmond County because we're sitting on the Strait of Canso, I think one of the deepest ice-free harbors in North America. It's a fantastic asset, and we need to work together with our partners along the strait to be able to develop that asset. So
right, and so you wouldn't rely so much on regional and national media to tell your story because they're not the kinds of stories usually that really support those objectives. Probably
not, and really, when you get to that level, going it alone is not always the most effective way to do that, and so that's why, like I said, we kind of look to those regional partnerships.
Right.
Yeah.
Just as we're concluding, this is a story I like to ask, every municipal person who I interview, and because we're always wondering, okay, how do we on one hand support the community in our questions and what we ask, but yet at the same time also sometimes the hard questions have to be asked.
They do.
Yeah, so I'm wondering with you as a politician and thinking about when you deal with media, how do you walk that line between, how do you handle the hard questions, is I guess.
Yeah, so that's also a great question. I mean, the bottom line is you need to, be prepared and you need to be truthful, because, at the end of the day, municipal councils have a job to do. We only have so much power. There are lots of things that are outside of our control. And so we need to be clear about that because I think part of that is managing expectations with the public. And we've had situations over the last number of years where people are looking for action that's this big, but we're able to provide action that's this big because that's what's within our power. So we try to be really clear about that. And it's not always an easy message for people to swallow though, because, a municipal government is local government. It is the level of government that has a direct impact on the daily lives of the constituents that live within the district, right? So it's a difficult balance, but all you can do is try to be clear about what is within your sphere of influence, and then be able to communicate that to the public, really.
And is it harder, do you think, being in a small municipality, maintaining the positive relationships with journalists when they have to ask questions that are sometimes difficult? Maybe they can be annoying sometimes. Maybe it's like, you have a different agenda than they have.
Yeah.
It's like, is it more difficult in a small community than a city, do you think?
In my experience, the opposite. Because we just, we all know each other. We kind of have a mutual respect. People who know me and know, I think, the other councillors at the table, we're in it for the right reasons. We know that the journalists are in it for the right reasons. And I think we have very similar jobs. We have a responsibility to the public. So I kind of approach it as we're working together on that. And I think that leads to really strong relationships with our media partners. I like to think so anyway. We like I said, we have more in common than we have differences. So, yeah.
Does Adam ask hard questions?
Sometimes he does.
I'm glad to hear that.
Sometimes he does, yes.
Okay, well, I'd just like to say thank you. It was a delight meeting you, and I'm really having a great time exploring your community all the way from Ontario.
Awesome, that's great. Keep going. There's lots of Richmond County to see, so thank you very much, Victoria.
You're welcome.
Only a year ago, Trevor Boudreau was a candidate running for the PC party in the riding of Richmond. Now he's been an MLA in the PC government of Tim Houston for the past year. But he also still remembers when Telile 24/7 first got underway while he was still a Port Hawkesbury Town Councillor. So Victoria Fenner and I thought it would be a good idea to bring Trevor Boudreau into the Telile studios to talk about how he feels Telile has impacted the discourse in terms of municipal and provincial politics over the past 2.5 years. Here's our conversation right now. And now joining us to continue our conversation about the role of community media in getting the news out to people in rural communities, I'm pleased to welcome two guests, one that we've had here for a few days now, Victoria Fenner, the program coordinator for the Local Journalism Initiative through the Canadian Association of Community Television Users and Stations, and also joining us here in our Telile studios, a familiar face around here, the MLA for the riding of Richmond, Trevor Boudreau. Welcome to you both. Good to have you here.
Thanks for having us, Adam.
Yes, thank you, Adam.
No trouble at all. So I wanted to begin with you, Trevor. We have you here to talk a little bit about your association as a public figure with Telile Community Television. And you and I were talking before the camera started rolling, and it's interesting that my work with Telile under the LJI program actually started before your time in provincial politics when you were still a town councillor in Port Hawkesbury back in 2020. And I'm wondering, was it bizarre for you to say, well, why are people bringing TV cameras into the town council chambers all of a sudden? What did you think of that?
Oh, listen, I think anytime as a politician, anytime you have an opportunity to speak to your community and to your riding, it's great. And having access like that, maybe it was a bit of a surprise, but it's a pleasant one, I think. And, from my perspective, it's been very effective from the get-go and continues to be.
Well, I wanted to ask you as well. I mean, I wonder if you remember the first times that I was interviewing you and interviewing Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton, and we actually were talking about physician recruitment, and I know a big announcement came through there just a couple of days ago with Health Minister Michelle Thompson. We've been following that story for a while, but what has it meant for you to be able to have Telile and to have community media to be able to get the word out about how not only town council's efforts are going, but now the provincial government's efforts are going to bring new doctors to our area?
Good comments and good points, and I didn't remember necessarily what the first time you were talking to me about back then.
It's been a while.
But I will say, town council at that time made local physician and recruitment a priority, and I was tasked quite a bit with that role, and certainly that was one of the reasons that I made that leap to run provincially, was because of our PC caucus's desire to make healthcare a priority and understanding there was a crisis there. And so when you get good news announcements that kind of bring it full circle to where you as a town council said this was an important piece for us, and now to see those types of things kind of making some steps, right? Those are steps in the right direction, and that's it's one person had said to me, how do you eat an elephant one piece at a time, and that's what these types of announcements are. It's about creating some focus on attracting and retaining healthcare professionals. So I'm pleased with where we're at, and I'm glad you're still here talking to me about these types of things, and hopefully over the course of the next little while we'll be talking more about it too.
We'll be talking more, and I mean, we've been very lucky not just to have yourself talking about it, but also other players and stakeholders in local healthcare. We spoke just a couple of weeks ago on Telile 24/7 to the Director of Rural Health for the eastern zone of the Nova Scotia Health Authority, Angela MacArthur, about the situation up at the Strait Richmond. And we've had regular contributions from the likes of Gina McDonald with the Cape Breton South Recruiting for Health Committee, and as well Dr. Kevin Orrell, who heads up Nova Scotia's new healthcare recruitment office in Halifax, serving the whole province. So we've appreciated being able to bring in not just yourself to talk about this, but also some of the other stakeholders in bringing rural physicians and also nurses and nurse practitioners to our communities.
Oh, and I mean, you know, it's a group effort, right? You learn fairly quickly when you're in this. It's everybody has roles and responsibilities, but you're all trying to kind of get in that get on that same page and kind of get to that end result that we're all looking for, which is a strong healthcare system across the province, and in our case, especially rural.
One last question on this, just before we move on. An announcement from Minister Thompson yesterday, the health minister, talking about a record number for Nova Scotia in terms of physician recruitment from April of 2021 to the end of March 2022. 163 new physicians settling up in Nova Scotia. There have been 68 that have left, but that still leaves a net gain of 95 new physicians for the province. Those are big numbers, still a lot of work to do, but your thoughts on the announcement made by Minister Thompson?
Of course, we're thrilled with that, and it shows that some of the initiatives that we've been taking as a government have been bearing some fruit. Keep in mind, these are early days, right? And so Dr. Orrell and his team are now creating kind of the system and the vision of how we're gonna ask for that that more rural support and get those community groups like Cape Breton South Recruiting for Health on board across the province, so that we can also support initiatives like attraction of nurses and doctors, and it's a challenging time, but a fun time to be doing that for sure.
We'll certainly pick up that conversation as the weeks go on. I want to shift over to you, Victoria, because part of the reason that we wanted you to be involved in this conversation with Trevor is because you're visiting the Telile Community Television studios and the coverage area. You've gotten a good look at the coverage area. So I just wanted to be able to bring you in on the conversation to talk to Trevor about his impressions of the work that we've done. So I turn it to you to make that ask.
Well, I am just so happy that I've been able to go on this fact-finding mission to actually work and to stop in the community media partners that we have in the local journalism initiative. And when we first started the LJI, then Adam had said that he came to Wakefield for a workshop with other LJI participants. Fun bunch of people from the Maritimes in that one, I've got to say.
They always are, right?
Yeah. So I had planned on doing this a long time ago, but then again, COVID started, so I couldn't even get into Nova Scotia, even if I wanted to. And of course, I didn't want to because we were still in the grips of COVID. But so to be able to get in my car and come down here and spend a few days at Telile, and also CHCO in St. Andrews, New Brunswick. Plus there's a community, Bear River near Digby, is very, very interested in getting a community media organization going. So I had some discussions with people there, and we have some interest from organizations in Halifax as well. So one of my colleagues at Cactus, Heather Ritchie, works for the national office, but she works out of Dartmouth. Okay. So we have someone here on the ground in Nova Scotia as well. So the purpose of my trip was, well, partly just to have fun in the Maritimes, must admit, but also too is to talk to people and find out, like, what difference has it made that this program exists and that journalists like Adam have been on the job now for a little over 2 years. So I'd just like to ask you, what difference has it made to this community that the Local Journalism Initiative and Adam has worked here and is working here? But also, what is the difference that Telile is a really, really special example. Not every community has one of these stations. In fact, most of them don't. So I just want to know from you, what difference does this all make?
You know, I brag a little bit about having Telile in my community to my colleagues at the legislature. So we're very unique in what we have here, and certainly what Adam and this initiative has brought is a whole other level. And so it's whether as my experience with the municipal politics or provincial politics, and certainly from following what Adam's doing, having conversations about federal issues as well, it's crucial that we get that local content, that local experience, that local understanding of what some of those issues are very local and very focused. Some of them are more broad, but it gives that perspective and gives that understanding of how it impacts our communities. And so, listening to, and no offense to, like the national news and provincial news, but they don't really necessarily bring that local perspective. And what I can tell you from my experience at two different levels now, we're very fortunate to have that, and it's important because it brings that ability to understand how it impacts us right here. And I think that's what people are looking for, and that's why it's been so successful.
So when you talk to your colleagues in the legislature, are they intrigued by this concept? Are they surprised by it? It's like, what kind of response are you getting from them?
They are, they're, with politics and with information, we have so much noise out there now, right? There's so many different ways of getting information. And so I have an avenue and I have a conduit that allows me to, to give my perspective and give what I'm seeing as the local representative to our local constituents that they don't necessarily have. And I will say Adam has been great to reach out to colleagues outside of necessarily, just the straight area to get perspectives and get an understanding so that they can bring that context too. So some of my colleagues have actually had the opportunity to have a conversation with Adam, and it's been, I think, very useful for them, but also for the understanding that he's bringing for all of our residents here. So I have I'm hopeful that it brings a good knowledge base to the residents, and they can understand the issues and how we're trying to deal with them.
I'll take a moment to jump in and say I've appreciated the willingness of your colleagues, both in caucus and in cabinet, to be able to speak to us here on Telile 24/7. And I mean, it would be one thing to say it's people that I had already known from my previous journalism exploits, the likes of Alan McMaster in Inverness, who's the finance minister and deputy premier, and Greg Morrow in Guysborough Tracadie, the agriculture minister. But I've also had great communication with, say, for example, Carla McFarlane, the MLA for Pictou East Community Services Minister. We had a great talk about homelessness in Port Hawkesbury and the surrounding area and what the province is doing to help that. John Lohr, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, I had him on just before December, and the Minister of Acadian Affairs and La Francophonie, Colton LeBlanc, helped me not just in English but in French with their programs Telile 24/7 and Notre Côté. So we've appreciated, and it's extended outside the PC party lines as well too. Liberal MLAs, including the two leadership contenders, and the newly minted leader of the NDP for Nova Scotia, Claudia Chender. We've had her on the show as well too. So it's been great. I've worked with provincial governments over the years that have been involved in journalism, but you and your colleagues have been quite helpful and really have made the time for us. And it's a two-way street, so we appreciate you all being on that two-way street.
But I think it's been wonderful that you've been able to reach out and they've been able to get back. But it's it's the colleagues across the aisles too, right? Like so we're all in this minefield, if you will, and trying to make this province better. And it's important to get those perspectives and get an understanding from all sides and from you're doing a great job in terms of that. And that's what I was getting at. It's really nice that we're getting that context and it's making people in this community aware of what's really going on.
Yeah, it all fits together.
Yeah, and I'd also like to ask too, how would you get your messages out in this county to your constituents if Telile wasn't here?
Good question. I mean, it's we're fortunate to have a local radio station, a couple of local radio stations, as well as a local newspaper. And a lot of times people will say if it's not on Facebook, it's not true. But I would argue, that's a great way to kind of promote what's going on in events. But in terms of really getting down to the nitty-gritty and having really in-depth conversation, this is probably the best avenue to do that, because you can sit down and hash it out as you're going. And so, we're very fortunate that way. As I said, my colleagues are a bit envious that way, because that's one way to do it, right? And
well, do they know that they could help get community media going in their own communities as well? They can all have a little Telile.
That's fair. I haven't had that conversation with them. I was more about bragging what I've got.
Right.
But in all fairness, it's I think there's an opportunity to have those conversations, and I think
Absolutely.
I think different levels of government probably should be having that, right, and making sure that that local content and local understanding of what's going on is continued to be preserved, because at the end of the day, there's so many different ways of getting information now, but it's important to make sure that that you're getting all sides and all perspectives so that people can understand it. And I think Adam in his role has done a great job of that.
Well, I'm going to not ask a question right now, but I'm going to just point out that I think what's really powerful about community media as well is because it's a nonprofit model, all of the money goes back into the operation of the station, which here it's a lot of bingo money that goes into running it. But the thing is, because the money is reinvested, then it's like everything goes back to the community. And also the presence of the volunteers who are adding their voices as well provides a lot of voices that maybe wouldn't have access to other media outlets. So I'm, so just stepped out of my question role there and just went into this. This is why community media is important role.
And I'll be honest, right? Telile has been doing a tremendous job of engaging organizations and other community stakeholders to make sure that information. Maybe it's not political information, but it's about making sure people are informed. And I had a great interview done a couple of weeks ago with a local member of the community homes in Loosedale, talking about some of the initiatives he's been doing, and great feedback, and it gave a better awareness of the Loosedale community homes and how important they are in our community. So again, when you're talking about that community perspective, I don't see a better avenue than this to get that across.
I'm going to put on my question lady hat again. This is a question for Adam.
The question lady.
Yes, actually, there was someone at CBC who used that a long time ago. So anyway, I did not make that up. But Adam, what, in your opinion, has this done for both the community sort of sense of conversation that you're here in this role, and also what's this done for your career as a journalist? Because I mean, part of the goal of the program is also to support journalists and help, because we're losing a lot of journalists across the country as stations and newspapers, and they're going dark. So this is one of the things that supporting journalists is really important too in their important work. So what's this done for you, Adam?
Well, what it's done for me is it's allowed me to actually live out a childhood dream, believe it or not. A lot of people thought, because I went and got my training as a journalist at the University of King's College, some of the TV training I'm finally being able to put to use, but a lot of people thought, oh, he wants to be Peter Mansbridge or Mike Wallace or one of the major investigative reporters. And my response to that is, no, actually, I just wanted to be a broadcaster and I wanted to be a storyteller. I was influenced in the 80s by people like Peter Zosky, and both in the TV and radio side of things. But I was also influenced by newscasters like Jim Nunn and Don Connolly here in Nova Scotia. And for that matter, even the host of a CBC regional television show called Switchback, Stan Johnson. You might remember Stan the Man. Yes, exactly. So these people taught me about how television and media in general could be used to reach out and get into communities that you might never have heard of. Before watching Switchback, for example, I didn't know there was such a thing as Chester, Nova Scotia. So, little things like that, you learn about these places. So I took that from years before I even considered being a journalist, and now I feel that this is where I am right now, that I get to be a storyteller. But the flip side of the equation, you ask, what does this do for the community? And Moses Znaimer, who was instrumental in setting up Chum and Much Music and so many of these stations over the years, once did a discussion about what makes a great local TV newscast, and he said, the best local TV newscast tells me what happened to me. today. And it's not about an elected official making a statement at Province House or somebody saying something during a council meeting. It's why does that matter? And I really hope that I've been able to distill down all the issues, all the headlines, and a lot of the noise, and basically have a conversation with people, folks like Trevor who have been so articulate and thoughtful, but also other politicians that have brought in people who are not even close to being politicians that have brought in people like Alicia Lake for the Cape Breton Food Hub, or Gina McDonald from Cape Breton South Recruiting for Health. They're able to breathe and tell the story in a way that makes sense and makes it relevant to those watching. And I hope all of you watching this right now do feel the same way. And a lot of people have been very kind to me over the last little while and told me how much they've appreciated distilling down and boiling down, say a 2.5 hour council meeting into a bite-sized chunk that people understand why this particular story or this motion or whatever means something to them. So I hope we've been able to do that, and I've been grateful for the response we've been getting on that.
And that really emphasizes, like people are saying, now that we have social media, why do we need professional journalists? We need professional journalists because they have the ability to take a story and work with the information and distill it to its essence. They also have the ability to ask the hard questions, but ask them in a way that is relatable to the rest of the community. And this is one thing about community media as well, is that we train people how to do this, so it makes them more discerning media consumers as well when they actually take part in the creation of a story, and they'll go, oh, I think I know why they cut that off at 3 minutes, and TV and everything. And gee, they asked that question. That's kind of a biased way of asking that question. So it's like in community media, then the journalist's discipline of working with the stories is transmitted to the people who then are volunteers at the station, and in some cases, some of our stations participate with high schools and elementary schools on media literacy as well. So it's sort of like, it's a lot bigger than just one journalist telling a story. We're very proud of that.
Yeah, and I'm just speaking from the experience I've had, over the last couple of years with Adam, and just the ability to get that information out, and there's no bias. He's bringing the information and breaking it into a way that people can understand and allow them to make an informed decision or understand. They're getting the information from him, and then they can think about how they feel about that information. And so, that to me is it's so important, and it's when you compare it to how social media often can be portrayed or and maybe sometimes it's taken out of context. When you look at a text or you look at a post, maybe you're reading it differently than it was actually meant to be read. And I think this initiative has allowed for something that is very open, transparent, and provides people the information they need to make decisions on how they feel. Yeah.
Right. And I ask every politician who I talk to who's working with an LJI journalist, does he ask hard questions?
Oh,
good.
Absolutely. And but there's a difference between, there's hard and then there's fair.
Yeah, exactly.
So hard questions, you have to be able, I would hope that politicians are willing to listen and understand why there's hard questions, because they're important. But if they're fair hard questions, that is what really is of essence of the relationship of a journalist with a politician. And I think when you have that relationship and that trust between you, whether we agree on issues or not is irrelevant. It's about getting that information out and asking the right questions. So
I've said more than once, if I've done my job in interviewing an elected official, or anyone else for that matter, that person has no idea whether I agree with them or not.
Yeah,
100%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%. And
so keep it clean.
But I will say, hard questions are usually good questions, right? And so there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. And I'm really happy to hear that. I know from watching Adam's work, because I've been watching it now for 2 years, that's the impression that I get. But I think that right now, countering that trend in media where you don't know the difference between, is this the reporter's opinion or is this a balanced kind of thing where all sides are being weighed, it's very difficult right now in this media environment where major networks, like, looking at Fox News and things like that, is like that's straight up opinion and gathering the facts to support an opinion.
100%.
Yeah.
I that's my vision of the process is very similar to what we're trying to do here, or what you're trying to do here, and what you're, it's I have, you always as a politician, you're in a position that has accountability and responsibility, and you want to make sure that you're doing the best that you can, I feel, and when you have tough questions, it makes sure you're being accountable, and but when they come from an unbiased place, it allows for A, trust, and B, proper information. So I think, that's how I always envisioned, that relationship, and I've been in it 12 years, and I think I can say that I've been very, very fortunate that that's generally how I've been treated, especially, like I said, with the likes of Adam, for sure.
Well, I appreciate that, and I also appreciate your willingness to be able to work with us and meet with us in nearly any format. I mean, here you are sitting in our studio with a mic on, but, I've interviewed you 3 times as a candidate and 4 times as an MLA. This is the 4th now. We've done it on Zoom. We've done it on the back deck of
That's
the
right.
St. Peter's Marina when you were here with the PC leader at the time, now Premier, Mr. Houston, and I've also done it with you on a picnic table overlooking the water in Lewisdale the day after the election when you won the riding of Richmond. And I'm glad you brought up the piece you did with Dean Sampson, because that was shot on location. Yeah. So I mean, journalism and television journalism can happen literally anywhere in any format in a community, when you have someone who's willing to work with you and kind of roll with the punches on that, and I've appreciated you being able to do that too.
I remember that first interview with the Premier, and I'm going to say it quickly, the now Premier, the leader at the time, and the depth of the information you were asking, and just how much information you had, he was blown away, and I will tell you that makes an impression, because there were good questions. It was about kind of campaign stuff, but the depth of it, and the research that you had to have put into it, made us feel really good about leaving that interview saying he did the right job. And so full credit to you there. And I will say, the Premier and I have had that conversation. So no, that builds that trust, right? It's not about me being able to just give the my perspective. It's about getting a fair and conversation. And so I will say, kudos to you for having that approach too. That makes a difference too, for sure.
I fondly remember that I surprised him because I remembered one of his campaign signs from 2013.
That's right.
When he first ran
That's
for
right.
MLA.
And I think that blew him away, because he's like, I don't remember all of it, so that was well done.
If
well
it
done.
sticks, use it.
Yeah.
Well exactly. Well, we've covered a lot of ground here in a short time.
Have.
Yeah, and did you want to ask anything else to Trevor before we go on?
I don't. I think this has been a very, very full time at Telile, and I just think you have some marvelous things going on here. And I thank you so much for involving me in your production, and to Becky, the station manager, for playing tour guide and driving me around all of Richmond County and even some places outside of Richmond County. And I just wish that more communities like this in Canada could have what you have here.
Well, we're very grateful to be able to have what we have and to be able to have your support as well. And of course, it helps to be able to work with public officials that A, return our calls, and B, make themselves available in whatever format or whatever location works. And we're grateful for that for you, Trevor, and even for coming in here today. So thanks so much for giving us some time here to talk about this issue.
Thank you for having me. As I've always said, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Our guests today have been Victoria Fenner, who is the program coordinator for the Local Journalism Initiative funded by the Department of Canadian Heritage through the Canadian Association of Community Television Users and Stations, or CACTUS, and the Progressive Conservative MLA for Richmond, Trevor Boudreau. And there you have it. That wraps up this week's edition of Telile 24/7. Thank you for tuning in, and a big thank you to Victoria Fenner, the program coordinator for the Local Journalism Initiative through CACTUS, for conducting the interviews with Amanda Mombourquette and helping me out with the interview with Trevor Boudreau. And thanks to Warden Mombourquette and MLA Boudreau for giving us some time to talk about the importance of community media. If you have any thoughts about what you've seen over the past hour, or just some suggestions for future episodes of Telile 24/7, I'd love to hear from you. You can contact me directly. My phone number is 902-625-8863, and you can reach me by email using the address adamjrcook, cook with an E, @gmail.com. You can also contact Telile Community Television directly with your suggestions and commentary. The station phone number in Arishat is 902-226-1928, and you can reach Telile using the email address telile@telile.tv. Don't forget to follow Telile on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and our YouTube channel features every single episode of Telile 24/7, including this one, as well as our sister programs, The Front Porch, Roundtable, and Notre Côté. For now, I'm Adam Cook. Thank you very much for joining me for the Community Media Matters series here on Telile 24/7. I look forward to seeing you again next week with a brand new show. Bye for now.